I have a short introduction, and then we're going to dive right into this panel. So from Gabon to all corners of the globe, practices with Iboga and Ibogaine are rapidly expanding. With this expansion, several important considerations arise, particularly around what happens when two seemingly disparate worlds collide. The world of traditional healing systems and the Western world that is hopeful for solutions to the problems of addiction and social and spiritual dislocation. I'd love to take this opportunity to introduce our panelists, or to allow them to introduce themselves. So please go ahead. Frank, we can start with you.
Welcome. I'm delighted to be with you all. I think this is a bold frontier that we're entering into. By way of introduction, I'm a professor of architecture and history at the University of Winnipeg and Manitoba. My area of specialization might seem totally disparate, using your word, related to the subject of Ibogaine, but remarkably, these paths do dovetail. My area of specialization began in anthropology. I then worked in ancient dead languages of the Middle East, which took me to Hermetic philosophy, and then ultimately the architecture of secret societies. You might be wondering, what on earth does that have to do with Ibogaine and the Indigenous Canadian experience? And that happened about 15 years ago when I had an opportunity through a fellowship to study the most extraordinary cultural site, perhaps in North America, but certainly in the Canadian Indigenous experience. It's a site known in the Anishinaabe language as Manitoba, where the Creator sat. And it's an ancient petriform rock formation, perhaps 5,000 years old, that was very sophisticatedly aligned with the stars and had not been discovered or rediscovered until the early 20th century, in which place it has been perimetered by a giant barbed wire fence, yet has been repeatedly gone to for rites of initiation for Indigenous people wanting to recover their ancient ways. So working on this site and soon to be publishing a book on it, I have worked with many Indigenous communities across Canada on subject related to rites of passage, cultural inheritance, and in particular, how the architecture, both in their language and in their built environment, relate to much broader themes about the cosmos. It's an entirely new field of study. And then due to very recently, 2 large grants that we have received through the Turtle Lodge. I'm a board member of an organization which I like to call the Harvard School of Traditional Medicine for Indigenous People. It's in the heart of Canada. It's called the Turtle Lodge Wellness Center. And there, through my mentor and elder, Dave Kershane, I've worked in an advisory capacity, mainly breaking down a lot of my analytical thinking and being introduced to plant-based knowledge and medicine of the people of this land. So that is my very desultory introduction, and I'm delighted to be with the rest of the distinguished panel.
That was a great introduction. Thank you, Frank. Uwe and Sister, if you'd like to go next, please.
Well, we're from Germany. This is psychologist. I'm a pediatrician. I worked in Gabon in 1999 in the old Albert Schweitzer Hospital, and we learned to know traditional healers over there. We watched their work, a lot of ceremonies. None of these involved Iboga, and watched a lot of healing. And we asked them a lot of questions, but they told us if we really want to understand what they do, we had to get initiated. We asked them how that. They told us, well, you have to eat a certain root bark, then you will die, you will be reborn, and everything will be different afterwards. So we were thinking for 2 years if we should do this, because we liked our life as it was before. And but we decided to do it, and we are very happy about it. And since 20 years now, we are working a bit on that field of more from the ritual side, less from the side of the drug, how it works, how they are working. Yes.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. That was a great introduction. Sester, do you have anything to add, or should we move on to Ian?
No, it's okay.
Okay, beautiful. Ian. All right, Ian Campbell, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. Hi, everyone. It's an honor to be on the panel with you. And Frank, it's great to see you. So my ancestral name is Khalid. Sukyo Siam Koshamin. My chieftain name is Sukyo. Chief Ian Campbell is my nickname. And I come from the Squamish Nation in Vancouver, British Columbia. So I'm a hereditary chief. I was raised by my late grandparents. My late grandfather, Chief Lawrence Baker, groomed me for succession in our traditional way to bestow the chieftainship on me through our lineage. But I'm also an elected councillor of my tribe, serving the last 16 years as an elected official and the last 21 years as a negotiator for the Squamish Nation. I was raised very traditional with my language and my culture. Going out on the land, I still hunt and fish, and we use a lot of plants and medicines from our territory, which is regular for my family. We always have an array of plants for our own purposes that we gather every year. And when I heard about the iboga shrub and ibogaine and the transformation that it provides, this really resonated with me. So I got involved with Universal Ibogaine as a director for the last year and a half. And we're doing a lot of the work to help get this company up and running and utilize ibogaine as one of those tools against this formidable challenge of addictions. And certainly, as an Indigenous leader, I've seen a lot of loss in our communities, a perpetual state of grieving from the impacts of colonialism and alienation and marginalization of our people and legislative oppression that continues to be the norm here in Canada and elsewhere. With this competition over scarcity resources and our connection to our lands has survived nonetheless. And we continue to see revitalization of our languages and cultures in our young people. And we need to see this health again come back to not only Indigenous people, but how we're a part of the solution to support one another as community. So as a director, I'm certainly interested in seeing the clinical trials go through successfully, but also the scalability of clinics on Indigenous lands as partners, where we're including some of our traditional spiritual and cultural practices into healing in our ways of knowing to bring people whole again and give them a new lease on life. We see the ravage that addictions has on our loved ones, and I want to do something that matters and makes a difference, and that's why I joined Universal Ibogaine, and very happy to share more this morning, so thank you.
Beautiful. That was an amazing introduction. Thank you, Ian. And you touched on a lot of the topics we will be covering, particularly how hard the First Nations have been hit by the challenge that is addiction. Before we get there, I would love for each of you to just share how you guys stumbled across iboga. I know Uwe and Sister shared a bit about your first experience and how much that transformed your lives. How did you run across it? How did you first hear about it, and why did it impact your life so much that you decided to make it essentially your part of your life's work?
Yes, as we already told, we lived in, it was only 3 months, we lived in Gabon, and we came to learn traditional healers, and they told us about it. And we decided to get initiated. We waited for 2 years, then we did it. And so it was certainly not a clinic where we have been. It's far away from being a clinic. It was part of a vast, uncontrolled experiment. As was told yesterday, taking iboga outside, far away from a doctor, and in a very special way. We have eaten the root bark melt together with leaves and other substances in balls, and we had no idea how much it was. We had no cardiac exam beforehand. beforehand. There was no substitution of magnesium or potassium. And we had purposely quite severe dehydration. For instance, Uwe, he was not allowed to drink anything for at least 16 hours after vomiting, about 2 liters. But we felt very safe because we knew that we were in a country with a vast experience with Iboga. We have tried to estimate it. It's not very easy, but we think that at least 200,000 Iboga-initiated persons actually may live in Gabon, perhaps more. This is a real experience. And healers know, and they mention that an Ibogaine trip is dangerous. So they expect the client to follow a lot of rules to avoid risks, and they make lots of efforts to avoid fatalities. But they are very different from the method we use. And you really have to leave your colonialist attitude and to try to understand what they really are doing and how they are avoiding risks. Very important for them is that the person, the client, the initiated person may have a not a psychological, but a spiritual development. This doesn't mean that the initiate has to be interested in spiritually before. For instance, me, I was not at all. He will, or me, I could become a spiritual person during the initiation process, and that was what was expected. That means the initiate is supposed to have a near-death experience. You leave your body, and that was really my experience. I left my body, and I got the chance to cross the border to another world for some time and to experience a profound happiness. I met my deceased father, and was a very life-changing experience. Then the group calls you back, brings you back into your body, the healers, and in the first time, you don't want to come back, you want to stay there. You regret. But to your surprise, during the next weeks, you will find some elements of the other world in your surroundings. Their colors are different, human relations are different, you feel being loved by God. And this is a change that can last and should last for the whole life. So this spiritual life-changing experience is common to all the different cults involving Iboga in Gabon. And the usual greeting among initiates all over Gabon is Bukaya, which means, do you know death? This is a great step forward. And this spirituality has really been life-changing for me. The next step after the near-death experience is an experience to be born again. I had this experience really in a very realistic way. The first days you feel like a very small child, and then you grow up and you grow up. I had a puberty again. It was very, it was even funny. It was a very real experience. And then you come back to society and your life should change. It changed for me. I lost a job. Because I was different when I came back. I didn't lose my partner because we are initiated both. That's what they say in Gabon. If a couple, both should be initiated. If not, you may have problems. So this has really changed my life, and still now I think I'm a different person. And that's one of the reasons why we are still studying and still interested in Iboga in our life. In the professional life, it is really also changing, but you can't do work like an initiation ceremony in Germany. You can speak about spiritually with people, but that's perhaps all you can do.
That's really amazing. You touched on a lot of the things I wanted to follow up on. So if it's okay, before I get back to you, Frank and Ian, Uwe and sister, you talked about being initiated into the women's Banji cult in 2003 and the Masiko cult in 2001, which led you to writing a book about physiological, spiritual, musical, and safety aspects of the Iboga initiation ceremony. So could you tell us a little bit more about that experience, what you learned from the Indigenous practitioners, and from your initiation, how much are you applying in your work today?